good people don't smoke marijuana.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 ah, yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You will know.
I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. Hey, boy, don't feel my world untrue. Yeah, I want to talk to you. My world can be true if you do what I tell you to. I want to talk to you.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio. This one is for Saturday, the 18th of November, 2017. I'm your host, Larry Love. We're here every week to bring you the latest information on medical cannabis and the adult use of cannabis from all over the globe. And there's a lot of big stories this week. And we also have a great guest. Wendy Love Edge is going to be our guest today, and she is going to talk about her book, and it's very helpful to people who are trying to get off of opiates. I know we've had several people on in the past, but you know what? It seems to be working. So Wendy Love Edge will be in the second part of the show. But first, as always, I've got news for you. There are some big stories. One of the biggest ones is global. Okay, this is from thedailybeast.com. These three kings of cannabis are going into business together. It is being called the largest global cannabis partnership to date, and this is written by Richard Baca. Let's see, Two of legal marijuana's largest corporations are joining forces with a legendary cannabis genetics outfit, creating an unprecedented joint venture that will sell some of pot's most recognizable brands throughout Canada, eventually selling in international markets. The deal's individuals, who are among the industry's most noteworthy, are calling the partnership the largest global cannabis partnership to date. The players are Ontario-based Canopy Growth, considered the world's largest cannabis company, with a market cap of $3.8 billion. Colorado-based Organa Brands, the U.S.'s most ubiquitous marijuana brand, thanks to its flagship Open Vape products, and the Netherlands-based Greenhouse, along with its sister brand Strain Hunters, known for their influential genetics, popular consumption clubs, and globe-trotting documentaries. The collaboration will operate through Canopy Growth's federally licensed agri-farm facility in Creemore, Ontario, with Canopy Growth issuing shares to Greenhouse and Organa brands in exchange for exclusive licenses in Canada for proprietary technology, genetics, and intellectual property. There's way more to this. Very interesting. This is the first of people getting together, big companies to go global, so to speak. You can read the rest of this at the dailybeast.com. Another really big story, I feel, is this is from the Multiple Sclerosis News today. Medical marijuana, MMJ hires lead investigator for phase 2 trials of medicinal cannabis to treat progressive MS. This is from November 14th, just a couple days ago, by Carolina Henrique. Just a little bit of it I'll read to you. MMJ Bioscience, an affiliate of medical cannabis research company MMJ International Holdings, has hired a principal investigator to lead clinical trials exploring potential therapeutic applications of cannabinoids in progressive multiple sclerosis, MS. Dr. Bianca Weinstock Gutman, a neurology professor at the State University of New York at Buffalo, is executive director of the New York State Multiple Sclerosis Consortium. She will lead phase 2 clinical trials, which have already been cleared by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, with the guidance of Paraxel, a clinical research organization. Read the rest of this at the multiplesclerosisnewstoday.com. How great is that? That maybe within 2 years there could be approval of the use of cannabis for MS, hopefully sooner. On the national scene, Representative Steve Cohen, a Democrat from Tennessee, really went at Jeff Sessions the other day, got him to sort of clarify some things. I think that some of the people that listened to this maybe didn't hear it all. Listen carefully to what Sessions does say in response to Steve Cohen.
Secondly, on marijuana, you said that you are basically doing the same as Holder and Lynch. I believe General Holder and General Lynch abided by congressional appropriations that limited the Justice Department in enforcing marijuana laws where states had passed laws on medical marijuana and others. Will you abide by congressional appropriations limitations on marijuana when it conflict with state laws?
I believe we're bound by that.
Thank you, sir. That's great. That's great. Now, marijuana is not as dangerous as heroin. Would you agree with that?
I think that's correct.
Well, thank you, sir. I would hope that in your enforcement that you would look at the limitations you've got. There's always an opportunity cost, and put your opportunity cost, your enforcement on crack, on cocaine, on meth, on opioids, and on heroin. Marijuana is the least bothersome of all. 28 states or 29 states in the District of Columbia have legalized it for medical purposes, 8 states in the District of Columbia for recreational purposes. Justice Brandeis famously said that the states are the laboratories of democracy. I would hope you'd look at marijuana and look at the states as laboratories of democracy and see how they've helped. In states where they've got medical marijuana, they have 25% less opioid use. It gives people a way to relieve pain without using opioids, which inevitably leads to death and crime. And so I would hope you take a look at that.
We will take a look at it, and we'll be looking at some rigorous analysis of the marijuana usage and how it plays out. I'm not as optimistic as you.
Okay, I think that's the line that everybody missed this past week. I'm not as optimistic as you, which means, he still, feels that there's, that marijuana is terrible. So we just have to keep our eye on him. Okay, I'm just going to play that a little bit back again, and then we'll go on and finish up this piece. But he still says he's not as optimistic as Steve Cohen, who's doing a great job, who actually told Sessions that this could help the opioid problems that we're having.
We will take a look at it, and we'll be looking at some rigorous analysis of the marijuana usage and how it plays out. I'm not as optimistic as you.
You said one time that good people don't smoke marijuana. Which of these people would you say are not good people?
Well, let me explain how that occurred.
All right.
Can I explain?
Quickly.
John
Kasich a good person? George Pataki, Rick Santorum, Newt Gingrich, Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, George Bush, Arnold Schwarzenegger, or Judge Clarence Thomas? Which of those are not good people?
Let me tell you how that came about, Congressman. So the question was, what do you do about drug use, the epidemic we're seeing in the country, and how you reverse it? Part of that is a cultural thing. I explained how when I became United States Attorney in 1981, and the drugs were being used widely, over a period of years, it became unfashionable, unpopular, and people were seen, and it was seen as such that good people didn't use marijuana. That was the context of that statement.
So, I mean, he still really believes that. So let's not be complacent out there regarding Jeff Sessions. He still holds the power, and he still hates us, so to speak. But Steve Cohen just really did a great job of getting some great information out to the people that need it. Another huge story this week is like really ridiculous. The headlines are terrible. Colorado doctors claimed the first marijuana overdose death. There was an 11-month-old child having heart problems, and they found marijuana in the system. And so I'm going to play this for you. And there are some scientists that have come out to sort of debunk the blame on this. So, but here's the story.
A medical case from Colorado is getting attention around the world today. S9 News first reported last night 2 poison control specialists from Denver reported what they claim is the first ever death from a person consuming too much marijuana. The patient was an 11-month-old who they think accidentally got into edibles or some kind of concentrated marijuana product. We also heard from other doctors who think the claim, which was published in a medical journal earlier this year, simply goes too far. 9 News reporter Brandon Ritterman broke the story for us, and we want to give some context to parents trying to understand this, about what the doctors say and what, if anything, we can actually do about it.
Yeah, absolutely, Kim. And the advice for parents really hasn't changed. It's lock your stuff up if you keep any kind of marijuana in the house, because marijuana just isn't good for kids. Still, even if these doctors are right, we need to point out the problem this baby had is not something they see every time a kid does get into marijuana. This child died of myocarditis. That is simply inflammation of the whole heart muscle, which causes the heart to push into the sac around it. And in this case, it ended up failing. Now, we have thousands of known cases of kids ingesting marijuana products and not having this problem. If this was truly a marijuana death, we don't know if it's something that only a small percentage of kids might be at risk for, because doctors don't know the mechanism, the reason that marijuana might lead to myocarditis. Also, even though we talked to doctors for our story who disagree about whether there truly is a link here, they do all agree that many other things are known to be more dangerous to your children than pot.
So, for example, opioids, we're far more concerned about opioids in that case of a kid getting really sick than we are of marijuana at this particular point.
Incidence-wise, there's been more problems with the little laundry tabs and just household chemicals. And so, you know, you have to keep all that stuff away from your kids.
To both of those points, we do know 119 kids have died in Colorado alone from accidental drug overdose deaths since the year 2000. None of those are marijuana. A lot of them are opioids, though. And we also know of 2 reported deaths of kids who died from swallowing those little laundry detergent pods. The point is, there's a lot of stuff that you need to lock up in your home if you've got kids, and a lot of it is more dangerous, strictly by the numbers, than marijuana is. That being said, state health officials in Colorado say we could collectively do a better job of putting away the stash. State health officials wrote in a report last year, quote, at least 14,000 children in Colorado are at risk of accidentally eating marijuana products that are not safely stored. Now, that conclusion, I should say, comes from government surveys, so take it for what you will. Again, this is not the, oh my goodness, marijuana is the most dangerous thing ever for your kids story. That is just not the case. Even the doctors who published the study about this child's death would not say that. But virtually all doctors agree you want to keep kids from getting into it. Even doctors who say this case is a bunch of baloney will tell you that, because we do know kids can get really sick from ingesting marijuana, especially concentrated. And that is one reason we've seen the state government here in Colorado put so much focus on potency, packaging, and the design of edibles, Kim.
So an 11-month-old, how much did this baby ingest?
That is one thing that they really can't tell easily by looking at the data. The parents didn't say. They did say there was admission that there were marijuana products in the home. They theorized there was consumption sometime 2 to 6 days before this child woke up and then had a seizure 2 hours later, ended up going to the ER. But because of the way that marijuana testing works, the active THC in your system goes away really quickly. It binds to fat in the body, and then they look for the next thing that it breaks down into. That's the urine test that can get people into trouble when they're applying for a job, you know, a week after they've used marijuana.
Right.
And because of that, this could be in the system for several days, and one strong ingestion, you know, 5-6 days ago, or it could have been he had a little bit less, but 2 days ago. It's just something we don't know at this time. And that's one of the things they admit is a limitation of the study.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Brandon.
Thanks, Kim.
You know, people jump to conclusions a little bit too soon. You know, there are several, you know, scientists and doctors that have just refuted the way this past report was talked about, and the report by these poison specialists. So, I mean, we all know that's bullshit. So, there were other reasons why that young child died. It certainly didn't have anything to do with THC. Prohibition is what this is all about. Here is an elderly couple in Pennsylvania who were arrested for hibiscus plants. They got raided because their insurance agent turned them in. Listen to this, crazy.
Buffalo Township and its police department are facing a lawsuit because they raided a house looking for marijuana plants and came away with hibiscus plants. The house belongs to Edward and Audrey Kramer in Freeport. In September, while investigating a fallen tree, their nationwide insurance agent reported to police the couple had marijuana plants on their property. The couple says police stormed their house and arrested them while Audrey was still in her underwear.
She came down, she opened the door, and there she was confronted with what she believes was about a dozen police officers with assault weapons who said they had a warrant. They pushed her, they went through the house.
And I really feel that I have been smacked in the face with this, and no, I don't think I'll ever trust a police officer again.
Nationwide Insurance is also named in a lawsuit. They tell us they're preparing a statement, but no comment yet from Buffalo Township. In Butler County, Sheldon Ingram, Pittsburgh's Action News 4.
Nationwide's not on your side, man. Unbelievable. Again, prohibition. This couple could have been harmed physically. Obviously, mentally they are. This woman will never trust law enforcement again. Law enforcement is not being educated enough, and it looks, and Nationwide, boy, I put a ban on them turning in their customer for hibiscus plants thinking that it was cannabis. Unbelievable. Something terrible really could have happened and someone could have gotten killed. It's happened before. Just terrible. Also in Pennsylvania, however, and we're going to go around the states a little bit now and play some news. Here's a pastor in Pennsylvania that is all for medical cannabis.
Pastor Sean Burkabile knowingly allowed his church members to break the law.
Why would a pastor do this? Why would a pastor engage this conversation? And I simply engage that question with, because I love.
In 2013, Matt and Angie confessed they were going to use medical marijuana on their daughter, Annie, who suffered from epileptic seizures because they had lost hope.
She was barely a child. She was doped out. She was not able to go to school.
And Pastor Sean says it wasn't his place to tell authorities of the activity. At the time, it was illegal in Pennsylvania.
My heart was broken. If it was my child, I'd be doing the same thing they were doing.
Medical marijuana is legal in 29 states and the District of Columbia. Pennsylvania is now one of them. But for the years that it was illegal, the family and the pastor kept this transgression a secret.
I see medical cannabis as a way of giving hope to families that lost hope a while ago.
After Pastor Sean says he looked into the medical marijuana controversy, he had to take his stand publicly.
To say it has no medical value is sinful. It's just abusive. It's, as one of my colleagues said in the Pennsylvania legislature, it's legislative child abuse, and I agreed.
And parishioners agreed when the family, who usually sits near the front of this church, told their story for the first time, risking their arrest. And now that Pastor Sean has helped pass Pennsylvania's medical marijuana legislation, he's determined to continue to share Annie's story with others.
If I get called the pastor for pot, but it provides hope for people and healing, then it's a good label.
And the pastor hopes that what happened in his congregation can happen again, but this time on a national stage. In Abbottstown, Pennsylvania, Michelle Chavez, Fox News.
Making progress in a culture that has not been open to it. It's getting really, really exciting. That was Pennsylvania. Here's a state I honestly thought would be the last possible state to ever go medical and legalization. Of course, legalization is not there yet. But Texas, medical marijuana is weeks away from being sold legally in Texas. Now, it is a limited program, though. But there's a lot of hard work that's been getting done down in Texas to make this happen and to come this far.
We are weeks away from the first legal marijuana sales in Texas.
Lawmakers approved the drug for medical use 2 years ago, but it's taken a while. The program, though, is just now launching.
The I-Team traveled to Florida to see what's coming to Texas. Here's Andrea Lucia.
Did you ever think you'd be growing marijuana? I never thought in a million years I would grow marijuana.
Bruce Knox is a second-generation greenhouse grower here in Winter Garden, Florida.
I grew up extremely with conservative values. I'd never even seen a cannabis plant prior to getting into this.
His late parents, both retired law enforcement officers, founded Knox Nursery in 1962. 52 years later, the family business has gone to pot, teaming up with investors to create Knox Medical, one of Florida's first medical marijuana dispensaries.
I was fortunate enough to go ask my dad about 2 weeks before he passed what he thought about this, and he said that I never thought that it should be illegal.
The company is now preparing to become the first to sell medical marijuana in Texas. In September, Texas awarded it the state's first license to dispense. The marijuana plants are already growing under tight security at its facility in Schulenburg, Texas.
How soon will you be selling this in Texas?
We believe we will be ready by the end of the year.
CEO Jose Hidalgo says Florida and Texas are similar, with large populations and largely conservative politics.
What made you want to expand to Texas?
Because I think that this is the future of medicine, and I think that there are millions and millions of people that can benefit.
Both states passed laws allowing non-smoking forms of the drug to be used for limited medical purposes. In Florida, levels of THC, the psychoactive chemical found in the plant, are capped for most patients at 0.7%. Texas will bar any substance with levels higher than 0.5. Florida began in 2014 legalizing the treatment for patients with seizure disorders and cancer. It's since expanded that list to include almost a dozen different conditions. In Texas, only patients with intractable epilepsy will be able to legally purchase medical marijuana. That's an estimated 150,000 eligible Texans.
As I always say, we're not politicians, we're operators. So we'll leave the politicians being politicians.
The venture is still a risky one. A Florida government website warns while medical marijuana is available, it remains illegal under federal law. To distinguish their products from recreational forms of the drug, employees here prefer to use the term medical cannabis, and they emphasize precision, safety, and science in its preparation.
This will develop
into a flower, a bud, basically.
From the greenhouse, the plant is harvested, dried, and treated.
We grind it up to a coffee-like consistency. You don't want to go too much finer than this.
Those grinds then go into this contraption.
It's fully automated,
which converts it into a thick oil.
What you're doing is changing the solubility of the solvent.
It's cooled and purified.
What we technically have done is combined hundreds of plant material down into this beaker alone.
Finally, it's diluted,
so that we can provide an even and measured dose.
It's then packaged and labeled.
The company plans to use unmarked vans like this one to deliver their product across Texas with security measures in place to keep it from getting into the wrong hands. There are cages and cameras throughout the vehicle. Each driver's uniform has a body cam too, as they deliver the drug directly to homes and offices.
They will get a positive effect.
Dr. Joseph Rosado was one of the first in Florida to start recommending cannabis. Many physicians, he says, remain reluctant.
There is a lack of research in the United States, again, because it's a Schedule I drug. And as long as it remains a Schedule I drug, we're not going to be able to do any clinical trials in the United States.
Because of that, insurance companies won't help patients.
They pay out of pocket?
Yes, ma'am. They have to pay out of pocket.
But Dr. Rosado says this drug can do good.
For a child that is having 200 to 300 seizures a day and drops down to 1 to 2 seizures a month, that's better than a slam dunk.
It's now Texas's turn to see what this plant can do.
Patients use this cannabis oil by putting a couple of drops under their tongue, and because the THC levels are so low, they don't get high off of it.
Yeah, they don't get high off of it, and they don't get the best medicine that they could possibly get if they had regular dosage and regular percentages and so forth. But it's a start, and that's Texas, and I thank everybody who's been working hard to get that going down there. They're getting close to actually legalizing for recreational as well. All right, before we take a break, two more little stories. Good news out of New York State. Veterans can now use medical cannabis to treat PTSD. Just approved.
Military vets with PTSD can now apply for medical marijuana. Governor Andrew Cuomo made the announcement this weekend. Veterans with PTSD will need to get a prescription from a doctor in order to purchase the medical marijuana. New York already allows medical use of the drug for treating other conditions like cancer and Parkinson's disease. Cuomo says adding PTSD to the list will help thousands of veterans in the state.
How about giving it to the veterans free, too? That's what I would do. Okay, one more. In Arizona, you can now get a degree in marijuana, and these companies are popping up all over the place, and I think it's good that people can get educated. I just think people should do their due diligence and find out who are the teachers, what are their credentials, why are they qualified to teach, and if they're giving you some kind of a certificate, what does that mean? So do your due diligence and also check out the prices. Sometimes these things are very, very expensive. It's great to want to get into this industry. It's going to be a fabulous industry, just growing tremendously over the next few years. But just be careful. Who's teaching you is what I want to say. Here's this story from Arizona.
Class in cannabis. It's no secret the medical marijuana industry is blowing up, but now people in the Valley are signing up to get certified.
Yeah, for the first time tonight, ABC 15's Lexi Suter showing us what it takes to get a master's in marijuana.
3.5 grams. Does that make sense to everybody?
Just call Chad Olszewski the Cannadine.
I'm the dean of the Cannabis College here.
He runs Herbal Risings, the Valley's first school focusing on the fundamentals of all things marijuana.
We understand what they're looking for from an employee. So we put all that information together in a one-day class.
A one-day class teaching people how to be a good bud tender. Yes, bud tender. And it's no joke.
As a bud tender, look at them as patients, look at them as customers coming in.
The course appeals to all different kinds of people with one passion. Becky Calloway now runs her own dispensary.
Just with cannabis replacing medication and stuff like that, you're changing people's lives.
Cannabis College gave Carl a way out of the restaurant world.
Never looked forward to a job like this.
Justin, too.
I spent my whole life being told I couldn't work in this industry by my family, and cooking was always my passion, and this was always what I wanted to do for a living.
Cannabis College is not required, but more and more dispensaries are requesting it. Olszewski believes his class is not only offering opportunities, but adding credibility to a booming industry, still trying to shake a stigma.
We have a lot of people from other backgrounds coming in and saying, wow, I'm so glad you put together this class, because where else are you going to find this?
Lexi Suter, ABC 15, Arizona.
So the online courses range in cost. Most are about $99, but the workshops cost even more. And then once you have some experience under your belt, you can also sign up to be a pot-fesser.
Okay, pot-fesser. Okay, very cool. Okay, we're going to be right back with Wendy Love Edge. She's going to tell us how she used cannabis and other herbal plant matter and medications to get off of 14 out of 16 pharmaceuticals. And she has a book out available very reasonably on Amazon and other places. So we'll be right back with Wendy Love Edge after this.
It's all about the 420 MMJRadio. The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show.
Hey, this is Scott from Rare Dangness. You're listening to Medical Marijuana Radio.
And we're back. And online today I have Wendy Love Edge. She's the author of 16, My Journey into Wellness. She's also a patient, a medical cannabis patient. And how would you say, Wendy, Bulldozer Health Show? Tell me a little bit about that as well. Okay, welcome to Medical Marijuana Radio, Wendy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to the show. So I'm also the founder of Bulldozer Health Inc. It's a nonprofit organization and healthcare reform initiative, and the host of the Bulldozer Health Show. So I'm wearing many hats, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. And, you know, obviously what you do and what I do, we try to help people, we try to educate people, we try to delineate between, you know, fake news, like we had come out the other day. There seems to be some doctors in Colorado that feel a 11-month-old baby died of marijuana overdose, but it's being very controversial. So it's really about educating. And the fact that you have this book out now called 16, My Journey into Wellness. Tell me about why you wrote the book and what prompted you to write this book.
Sure. So I became ill in 2011, and it was with a disease called dermatomyositis. It's an autoimmune disease where your body eats your skin and muscle cells. And they told me I would die from the illness or from the treatment that they had to give me. And in a very short time, I went from working 60-plus hours a week as an occupational therapist and wife and, you know, person who could function pretty well to a person who was in a power wheelchair, unable to care for myself, and what I call bulldozed on 16 pharmaceutical drugs. And, you know, initially in the acute phase, I definitely needed some of those pharmaceuticals. You know, high-dose steroids and chemotherapy is what they treat it with. But with pharmaceuticals, one drug leads to the next drug, leads to the next drug, and before you know it, you're on 16, like I was.
Oh, okay, so that's where 16 comes from. Okay, I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what happens with opiates? So you get a level, you sort of level off, and then you have to take stronger ones? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I had more pain and more, you know, undesirable symptoms on the opiates and other drugs. So the pain, you know, was pretty significant. I already had psoriatic arthritis, psoriasis, diabetes, some heart issues, but I was able to function with those things with a small amount of pharmaceutical drugs. Once they added all of these other drugs and the opiates, you know, I ended up on morphine round the clock, Percocet 4 or 5 times a day, Valium, Xanax, gabapentin. The list was just endless. And, you know, your mind, you don't even know that you're becoming addicted to these things. Your mind is just, you know, again, bulldozed. You can't think clearly.
I would say cloudy is maybe a good term. You really can't think, and it sort of is blocking reality, it sounds like.
It definitely does. And, you know, you start to, the pain was pretty significant, and I had to use a power wheelchair because with dermatomyositis, you know, your muscles get really weak, and I couldn't hold my arms up. I had no strength in my arms. And if I tried to walk, I would end up falling. And the thing was, on all the drugs, I couldn't even remember that I wasn't supposed to get up and walk, so I'd get up and fall frequently. And also, you're kind of like waiting for the next pill all the time. It's, you know, your body and your mind becomes addicted to these substances, and I don't believe that they are meant for people to take over the long term. You know, of course, you're in an acute accident, you could break your leg, you know, you have something really significant happen. The drugs can be helpful in those situations, but they are drugs. And, you know, what's really disconcerting is when you go to the doctor, they frequently just reach for their prescription pad when you come in with a problem. You know, what they have in their toolbox, a regular allopathic physician here in the United States, is pills, tests, or surgery. And so that's what they're going to offer you when you go to the doctor with a physical problem or an emotional problem.
Right, well, the old joke that's been around for 50, 60 years is, you know, you go to your doctor, you know, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. I mean, that's been the attitude, you know, for in our lifetime. You know, I'm 67 years old, and I know this. I've been watching it, and the abuse of physicians in the pockets of the pharmaceutical companies, just dealing out pills is what's been hurting everybody and killing people. So, had you had any experience with cannabis before this, or were you new to cannabis?
I was pretty new to it. When I was in high school, you know, I smoked it. And, you know, when I think back on that, you know, I had some difficulties in my childhood, and I was sort of an overachiever also, and I really think it was medicinal for me at that time. I just didn't think of it that way. But then, I graduated from high school, went to college. I went to Boston University, and it was a very rigorous program to become an occupational therapist. And I really was focused on my studies, and I really never went back to it. And then I worked in healthcare where they frequently drug test people. In fact, they still drug test people, and even in legal states, they follow federal guidelines. So a healthcare worker wouldn't be able to use cannabis medicinally even in a legal state. But yeah, so the short answer is I had a little bit of experience. What happened was, so I was on all these drugs. I was in the wheelchair, nearly bankrupted by the healthcare system, and addicted to opiates. And I was at the time living in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And I'm from Massachusetts, and so we decided as soon as I could walk to and from the car and use the bathroom myself, we were going to sell our belongings to pay for the trip to get back to Massachusetts, because I knew that the healthcare system was better here in Massachusetts. People long had access at least to regular healthcare. So that's what we did. We came back to Massachusetts. But I just wanted to continue the drugs because I had been, my mind was in a mindset where I believed what they told me. I believed I would die from the disease or the treatment, and I wanted to do everything they told me so that I could live. I had a strong will to live. And so we came back to Massachusetts. I continued on the drugs, and I got a little better. I could walk on arm crutches, but my immune system was shot. I was in and out of the hospital all the time. Your body just can't rally under all those chemicals. And the doctors and scientists don't even know what's happening in your body when you're beyond 2 drugs. So I was on 16.
So how they interact with each other is obviously so important, and people actually get very sick when certain drugs don't interact well with each other. So
right, and they can't possibly know, So in 2013, a friend came to visit to help me. I had a life change. I found myself alone, and I was struggling. I couldn't drive. I could do more than previously. I had gotten a little better, but I was still just surviving. And I decided that I was going to start to wean off of the drugs. And so basically what happened was I had this mind change. I was in the mindset, I need to take these drugs or I'm going to die, or, I need to listen to the doctors and follow their advice. And then suddenly I just changed my mind and decided I could be healthier, and I wanted to get out of survival mode if that was possible, and I needed to know what my body could do. So I started to wean off of the drugs, and of course, I went into full withdrawal. I was shaking, sweating, unable to formulate a sentence, just really, it was horrible.
So let's just talk about that for a second, because this is really an important crux of the situation, is how do you wean off? I mean, you didn't have any experience. I mean, you can't really just stop taking certain medicine, especially in pain pills and things that can cause seizures and other types of withdrawal side effects. So, I mean, do you just start cutting your pills in thirds, or I mean, you made this up on the fly. So, what was going through your head, and how did you do it?
Well, so like I said, I had changed my mind. When I say I changed my mind, I mean I completely changed my mind to the positive and decided I could be healthier. And I would write affirmations down, put them on the refrigerator, and read them. My body can heal itself. I am healthy. I would say these things every day. And then I started to wean off of the pills, and I decided not to tell my doctor because, I had asked over the time that I had been sick, what can I come off of? Is there any pill I can come off of? And they said no, because you have a diagnosis to go with every drug, and, you have all this pain, so they had already told me that I couldn't come off of anything. And so I knew that I had to do it myself, that they were, that it wasn't going to be something I could talk with my doctor about, because I had already tried going down that road. So I went probably too quickly. I started with the morphine because I had been on that, around the clock, and I felt like that was sort of the first drug that I needed to try to wean down a little bit so I wasn't so snowed, in my mind.
Absolutely, yes.
And so I basically cut it in half right away. And I can't recommend that to other people. I always tell people I don't dispense medical advice. I can tell you what I did and how it worked. And then, you really need to do your homework. And I'm always happy to chat with people. People connect with me all the time and, just for support. I don't mind that at all. In fact, I like it. I want people to find health and wellness. So I cut the morphine in half and I started to go into withdrawal. And so, as I was saying, my friend came to visit, and now this is the interesting thing too. So I wasn't a cannabis user, right? I had no idea that most of my friends were cannabis users, because people kind of stay in the cannabis closet if they think you're not on board, and they don't want to get into that discussion usually. So my friend came to visit, and she looked at me and said, "Oh my gosh, Wendy, you look so sick. What's going on?" So I explained to her, and she said, "Have you tried marijuana?" And that was the turning point, because then she divulged to me that she was, in her 60s. She had used it her whole life and found it to be medicinal to help with anxiety, to help with depression, to help with pain. And, I was a therapy major, like I mentioned, so definitely science-based thought. And so we looked it up, and she showed me, that there are studies in Israel that they're using this as medicine. Let's just try it, she said. So she went to her car and brought some in. And we did have, at that time, just medical had passed in Massachusetts. So anyway, I took 2 or 3 puffs, and the withdrawal symptoms went away. Like, seriously, stopped shaking, stopped sweating. And the pain was almost gone. I mean, I had significant pain, sacroiliac pain in my back, my feet. I have neuropathy. I mean, even on the drugs that they had me on, I still had pain. And I really think it's because my body was so out of balance. Using cannabis, your body is seeking homeostasis or balance. Your body is built to accept this medicine.
Well, you activated your endocannabinoid system, which wasn't activated probably. The opioids, if I'm not mistaken, I think opioids sort of block some of the... they actually operate, I believe, on the same receptors, and so people are actually endocannabinoid deficient. And and so what you experienced was just an activation. And so how did you just like take a few puffs, and then when you sort of felt your side effects of the withdrawal coming back, you would take a few more? How did you end up dosing yourself, and did you move into edibles or anything like that?
Well, so this friend who stopped by, she was really just an acquaintance at the time, but this is how I knew the universe was working in my favor. Not only had she reintroduced me to cannabis as medicine, but she was free to help me for the next 2 months. It was her last day of work when she had stopped into my house for 2 months. And so she came every day, and initially she was sharing her medicine with me, and she had, some different types. And it was working. So that was when I started to investigate becoming a medical patient. And, I did call my doctor's office just to get information, and they had no idea what was needed, how I could become a patient, because you see, even in the legal cannabis states, your regular physician most of the time is not going to write a recommendation for you, because if they take any federal money, like from Medicare, they can't. It's still federally illegal.
Right. Well, it's a recommendation and not a prescription. Okay, the prescription thing. If you can write a DEA prescription, then they've made it so they're not writing prescriptions. It's like a recommendation that they're recommending it.
Yeah.
And I found the same thing when we first started here in New Mexico. 2009, we finally got our first dispensaries, and I couldn't find doctors that would even write a recommendation. They're not educated. Not only do we have to educate people about what the plant can do for them, but we have to educate the doctors because they're not trained in medical school to know about the endocannabinoid system.
They are not trained at all. And, now, more recently, I've, through Bulldozer Health and my activism, I've connected with some cannabis doctors who are amazing, and, especially Dr. Uma, Dr. Tammy Post, and Dr. Steph, she's in Connecticut. So these doctors have educated themselves on the endocannabinoid system. And, I've heard Dr. Uma say, I don't get to write a prescription for my patient. It's just a recommendation. And things need to change. Back when I was withdrawing from the drugs and starting to change my health for the better, really we just had medical here in Massachusetts. The doctor said they didn't know anything about it. I was really determined, so I continued to talk to people and do research because I wanted to be a legal patient, and so I found CannaCare docs, and they're in several states, and I was able to go there, but I had to reach into my pocket and pay $200 to see the doctor. And then I decided I was going to do other things for my health, like improve nutrition, improve my body by seeing a chiropractor and acupuncturist. And all of these things I also had to reach into my pocket to pay for. And it was a struggle, but I was really determined to improve my health. I had realized that you can't spell healthcare without THC. You just can't. You need the THC. You need the cannabis. But you also need to improve lifestyle choices and look at treatments that are really whole body and work with your body holistically, because everything is connected. And these things were also vitally important. So I went to see CannaCare docs at that time. I got my recommendations. And it was very difficult even then to get the medicine. I couldn't believe it. I had worked in healthcare for 25 years. And the idea that now I have a recommendation, but there are no dispensaries, no pharmacy, I have to search for a caregiver, And thankfully, because I had changed my mind and I was so persistent, I was able to find a great caregiver and get on the road to really using cannabis as medicine. He reviewed all my symptoms and diseases. We sat and talked, and he gave me some recommendations for different strains to try. And, you really do have to do that. What I did at that time was, try a strain, see if it worked. If it didn't work, then I'd try something else, because every body is different,
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
And it's, it's medicine, it's not a pill that you're going to take, that it's not one size fits all.
Have you found the opposite George effect, I call it, from Seinfeld, where some people, they get upper from an indica and they get sedated from a sativa, or the hybrids that everything is just so crossed now. You never really know how your body's going to react to it until you actually try it.
Absolutely. And, it's important to, keep a journal, write down the different strains, what it did for you. And you're absolutely right. Most things are hybrid. I prefer the sativas. I prefer things that are really high in CBD for the different health ailments that I have. And then if I'm going to use an indica, it's because I'm having trouble sleeping, So one thing I love about cannabis is it's really patient-driven. You look at your symptoms, you learn about it, it becomes just a part of your being and a part of your life. And there's so many different parts to the plant that are healing and medicinal. I love to juice the leaves. I ask growers to save leaves for me. The juicing of the leaves in a shake with other vegetables and fruit, oh my goodness. It's just, if I have a lot of inflammation and swelling, that will bring it right down.
Yeah, they're saying that juicing raw leaves is just some of the best medicine that the plant actually produces. However, the problem is being able to get these leaves, because the growers, obviously they need to take plants to all the way to maturation and either sell it as bud or make it into oil, which is also the best medicine. So it's hard to get the juice. Someday I'm hoping that there'll be some companies out there that will just be growing the cannabis for juicing only. I mean, whoever does that is going to have a real nice business going for sure. So I just want to tie some things up. Your book, 16, My Journey into Wellness, you just told us a little bit about how you weaned off of your opiates by cutting them down. How long did it actually take you to be totally off of the 16?
Well, so by starting to use cannabis to help me, I came off of 7 drugs in 30 days, and that was really fast.
That is
and again,
fast.
I can't recommend that to people, but my friend who was helping me would remind me all day to keep medicating. I was pretty medicated on the cannabis as I was going through that process, and improved my eating habits and water. Water is so essential to keep hydrated when you're smoking, especially cannabis, in any amount really. So, I was really shifting my whole health at that time. And so I came off of 14 of the 16 drugs over about a 3-month period. And again, I wouldn't recommend that to people, but I was really determined. And what happened was I realized through the process how so many people would not have access to this medicine, and I became really passionate and driven to help to provide access to people. And so the nonprofit that I founded, Bulldozer Health Inc., was born out of me going through this withdrawal process and using cannabis in all its forms to get the entourage effect, which is so important, daily. And I feel like it expanded my mind also to create this nonprofit. And I'm really proud to say, we are in 4 states. We help people to access doctor visits. We network with doctors, and people can apply on our website, bulldozerhealth.org, in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Arkansas. I got sick in Arkansas, so I was really determined to include Arkansas in the beginning of this project. And then in Massachusetts, where we have full legalization, we also have been able to gift to patients cannabis that is donated by growers. And
when you say growers, though, is there a caregiver a program there where people can grow for other patients? Because some states don't have that.
There is in Massachusetts, but you can only grow for 1 patient, actually. But because there's full legalization, anyone can have 6 plants, 6 plants per person in a household, up to 12 per residence. So more people are growing. And, grow rights are human rights. It's so wonderful to be in a state where there are grow rights for people. It's not perfect. There's still, lots of changes and discussion about the law that was passed by the citizens of Massachusetts. But, we still have some work to do. But the nice thing is that people can grow their own medicine and gift to other people.
That's fantastic, because here in New Mexico we cannot do that. I can't even share a joint with somebody in the same room with me without risking being thrown out of the program. So I mean, but you know what? 1996 was the first medical program in California, and then of course now we're up to 28, 29 states and about 8 with the legalization for adults. So it's taking time, but at the same time, things are really accelerating very, very quickly.
They are. I mean, I'm so excited. In my lifetime, I never thought I would see this. I remember, like I said, when I was in high school, smoking, and it just never occurred to me that it would become legal. We were all affected by reefer madness and the stigma, and breaking the stigma is still so important. And so we also, through the nonprofit, educate people through our blog and also our TV and radio show, the Bulldozer Health Show, because continuing to educate and myth bust for the plant. No, and our show isn't only about cannabis. We also talk about alternative health methods. We interview people who have found improved health and wellness through natural treatments. It's really an interesting show.
So how can people hear the show? Where do they go to listen to the Bulldozer Health Show?
So the Bulldozer Health Show is on YouTube, and it's also, the audio is on 2 radio stations, KPSQ in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and WCUW in Worcester, Massachusetts. We're also on iHeartRadio, iTunes. The video portion is on 3 different television stations, Citizen TV in Connecticut, WCCA TV in Worcester, Massachusetts, and Fayetteville Public Access Television, and they are amazing. We have produced the show out of Fayetteville Public Television all this time.
Wow,
And,
that is fantastic. Boy, you're on many platforms spreading the word, and it's greatly appreciated. I'm sure that your book, 16, My Journey into Wellness, which is available on Amazon for $14.99 for the paperback. Is it also available electronically?
It is. You can buy it on Amazon Kindle for $4.99, and if please, I hope people find some inspiration. I tell my story, and then I provide what I call remedies for health, and basically discuss changing your mind to the positive. I provide a meditation for people to help them with that. That was produced by Sunta Africa and has music by Angela Edge in it. And then we talk about nutrition, pharmaceutical review. All pharmaceuticals aren't bad, but you need to do your research, make sure the benefit outweighs the risk. Ask your physician to review all of the side effects and interactions with you. Make them take the time to do their job. They're not supposed to be just drug dealers.
Absolutely.
They're supposed to be caring patient.
We need a lot of change in our healthcare system for sure. We need advocates when we're dealing with certain disabilities and going into the hospital for different procedures. You need to have someone help you with it. The healthcare system needs certainly a go over. So 16, My Journey into Wellness on Amazon. You can get it for $14.99 in paperback and for something electronically on Kindle. Wendy Love Edge is the author, and thank you for sharing your story today on Medical Marijuana Radio.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was fun. Thank you.
Let's do it again. We'll be right back after this.
Late last night I was dreaming. I was dreaming of your charms. I was standing on the edge of love in your arms. Well, you whispered sweet things and you told me that you would love me and always be true. And you'll stand on the edge of love with me if I would stand with you. That's why I'm standing on the edge of love, and I'm just about to lose my mind. I am standing on the edge of love one more time. Woman's mind will wander. It will wander to distant shores. If you would just come here and stand with me, I will wander no more. You see, a woman's dreams are many, and Lord, so few come true. Well, if you just come here and stand with me, I will stand with you. That's why I'm standing on the edge of love, just about to lose my mind. I'm standing on the edge of love, baby, one more time.
the medical marijuana, the medical marijuana radio, radio show.
Thank you very much, author and patient and activist Wendy Love Edge. Check her book out and on Amazon and give it a read. It's helping a lot of people. A lot of people are getting off of opioids with the help of many people telling their story, like Wendy. Also want to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. If you have a story to tell, if you have a product to sell, you're an advocate, you're an activist, website, anything cannabis, it's info@mmjradio.com. Again, info@mmjradio.com. If you want to hear our old shows, you can go to our website, medicalmarijuanaradio.com or mmjradio.com. We're also available on YouTube. My YouTube channel is LSLove88. On SoundCloud and Spreaker, we're MMJ Radio. On CannabisTube.net, you can see our show. On Spreaker and iHeartRadio, we're on the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. And we're also on Now TV, Channel 937.
Shalom.
Oh yeah, and fuck Trump.